So my parents, they're not kind of musical theatre freaks, but they had, you know, the vinyls. They had Company. I loved the golden age of musicals, and when I found Follies and I played it, I completely took it at face value. I didn't understand the irony. I think I was about 13. I just thought they were wonderful songs in the style of Rodgers and Hammerstein and Irving Berlin and, you know, the people I loved. And it wasn't really until many years later that I thought, oh, I see, it's ironic, it's a comment. But Sweeney Todd, you know, just astonished me. And so I wrote to Sondheim when I was about 15 and I said, I am such a fan, and if I ever come to New York, can I meet you? And he wrote back and he said, sure, if our mutual schedules allow, look me up. And his address was on the back of the envelope. And he actually also sent me a package of records, LPs. He said, you may not have these, they're out of print. I remember there was actually a grey hair on one of them. So they were his own personal records. And yeah, I mean, you can imagine how thrilling and inspiring that was. And so basically, as soon as I was able and I'd scraped enough money together, I think I'd just turned 21, and I had done Interplay. I'd met Nellie, and I asked Nellie if I could come and stay with her, come to New York, meet Sondheim, and so I did. And I wrote on a postcard with the phone number of Nellie's mum, and I put it under his door. No. And back in those days, so we're talking, this was 1986. Not everybody had answering machines, and Nellie's mother didn't. And finally he left a message and said, I've called about 7 times and I've tried to leave you a message, but there's no answering machine. But yeah, if you want to come, what about next Tuesday? And so I went to his house, and I remember it was pissing down. It was wet as, and I bought a crappy street umbrella, you know, that blew inside out instantly. And so I arrived at his door like a wet rat. And I was so nervous, and suddenly I was about to knock, and just as my fist was about to rap, I thought, what am I going to talk about? I've done nothing in my life. I'm 21. I haven't, I'd written like baby musicals, but I had nothing to say. And I was suddenly just kind of struck dumb, but I did knock. I had to knock.
You had to.
I had to knock. And he flung the door open, and I remember what he was wearing. He, you know, that blue and green T-shirt that he's often photographed in.
Absolutely, he was wearing that.
He was wearing that, and slippers, and he flung open the door. I said, come in, oh, you poor thing, you're so wet. And he took my umbrella, and he gave me some tea, and we sat down and had biscuits.
Can I just make sure, you weren't on LSD at this point?
No, and biscuits, I mean cookies. Yes, yeah, this really happened. And again, I had nothing to say. I sat there. I think he was a bit surprised because, there was no internet or anything. He couldn't have Googled me.
Right.
And I was a child, really. And I think he was a bit surprised that I was as young and inexperienced.
Well, you must have had a very mature presentation in your letter. You must have
I must have had nice handwriting or something. But yes, but he obviously could sense that I was terrified. And he was so relaxed and charming.
Oh, this is
and he asked me questions. He said, do you like writing lyrics or music better? I said, lyrics. He said,
right answer.
And he said, oh no, music's so much easier. You just sit down and you noodle away and you've got a tune, but lyrics are so hard. Sorry, Greta. We'll talk about that later. And he said, no, lyrics are the hard bit. And he could tell that I didn't have very much to say. So he just chatted. He was writing into the woods. He talked about, redrafting and what that process. He talked about Jonathan Tunick. He gossiped. He had some funny stories. And then he said, are there any albums of mine or recordings that you don't have? And I said, well, you sent me those other ones, but I don't know what else there is. And he said, come upstairs. And he took me to a room where his grand piano was that he composes on. And there was sheet music, all handwritten on the piano. And all the walls were lined with shelves of records. And he pulled a few off, like Evening Primrose, and these things that I don't know if they were even ever made many copies of. But again, he loaded my arms up, and they were all a bit dog-eared and battered, so they were his own records. And it was an hour exactly. So he was aware. And he
sure.
said, so lovely to meet you. Good luck. If you happen to be flying home through San Diego, come and see a preview. And so, of course, I changed my ticket.
You did? Oh, my God.
But I went out and I'd forgotten my umbrella. It was still pissing down. But I couldn't go back. It would be very anticlimactic to knock on the door.